And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we need to write blog posts about how horrible we are, right? That's not the point.
Hello and welcome to episode 62 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is well you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, and this podcast serves as my excuse to chat with marketing friends, old and new, that I've met through my 20-year B2B marketing career and share some marketing street knowledge that I hope will help you become a Rockstar CMO. Come say hello. You can find this podcast at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This episode was recorded on Friday the 14th of May. Regular listeners might notice I got the month wrong last week. Clearly lockdown is getting to me. But wherever you are, I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. In today's episode, Jeff Clark returns for One to Watch, One Hit Wonder or Wonderwall. My guest is the Senior Vice President of Products at Hootsuite, Darren Guarnaccia. And of course, I complete the week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with Robert Rose for a chat and a cocktail. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. Jeff Clark, Rockstar CMO advisor and former research director for Serious Decisions and Forrester, is back for One to Watch, One Hit Wonder or Wonderwall. Let's see what's hot or not in the world of marketing this week. Hello, Jeff. Welcome back to Rockstar CMO. How are you?
Great. Good afternoon.
Ah, yes. Good afternoon to you. And did you enjoy your week off from us last week?
Yes. Yeah. No, it was very nice. And the weather here is warming up, and so spring is in the air, and it's always good to be outside doing stuff. So good. Yes, that's what we did.
Good. And your replacement, David, has left the place. Your little spot, your hot seat, tidy and without crumbs or anything like that.
It looks pretty good. Yeah. Of course, it's all virtual. I don't know how you pick up virtual. I know virtual cookies, but I don't know about virtual crumbs.
Splendid. Well, welcome back to One to Watch, One Hit Wonder or Wonderwall, where we are going to decide what's hot and what's not in the world of marketing. And a couple of weeks ago when we chatted and last, we talked about discussing intent marketing, which I think is a very interesting topic. And as I normally do, when I toss the grenade of the topic over in your direction, what say you, Jeff?
Yeah, so it is. I think intent marketing it's interesting in that if you think back to a lot of the conversations we had, where we were talking about privacy and we were talking about tracking people on the web and blah blah blah. I mean, a lot of it is around this idea that is certainly it's very recent. This idea that you could actually get triggers about buying intent from, whether you're doing account-based marketing, you're just looking at accounts, or you've got, specific individuals you're tracking. And certainly if you go back, I don't know how far you have to go back before companies like the Demand Bases or whatever came up with the idea of, I can actually track people on your website, to a contact. So it's something that's been in development for a while. And, I think there's a couple interesting dimensions that are updating this. And one is that you see technology companies now appealing to sales for sales intent. So how can you, whoever's in your CRM system, how can I help you discover that they're actually they're active out there and looking at they're shopping. They're out there shopping, and you got to bring them in the store. And the other thing is that certainly the company I worked with immediately prior was Forrester Serious Decisions, and the team that had built their demand waterfall was continuing to evolve it. And one of the things that was the recent innovation, they just recently did another revision of it. But if I go back, I actually think it's 3 years ago at this point, they started to build the funnel as being both a sales and marketing funnel. It's not just, the old days, it was like marketing did their bit, got people to engage, take them through qualifying, take them over to, inside sales, business development, whatever. They telequalify and move it on. So everything seemed very linear, and everybody had their very distinct roles, which isn't reality because anybody could be looking for 10 signals, right? It could be the salesperson. It could be the professional services guy on the, that's on a gig that's at the client, or it could be marketing. It could be the guy who manages the webcast, or it could be the Marcom or the marketing ops person who's reading reports and saying, oh, look, this company we got like 6 hits on the website from this company. Yeah. Or it could be, AI that does this, which is what a lot of the vendors are providing. So one of the it makes things that, as often happens as technology evolves, is that everything gets more complicated, but then the technology is supposed to simplify it. Yeah. So when you think about sales and marketing looking for buying signals together, then you get into these organizational issues of, okay, how do we actually do that? Is it marketing ops and sales ops sitting together and reading reports? Is it you put people in kind of pods of, marketing and sales are together in regions, or, some sort of targeting organization principle. And that's hard to do. It's hard to do from an organizational perspective. And although one of the companies I think I referred to many weeks ago, I can't remember how many weeks ago, was Avanade, and they had done a great job at creating the analytics tools that enabled regional sales and marketing teams to evaluate demand together. Mm-hmm. That's the ideal. Whatever that pod is that's focused on a set of accounts, or maybe a particular big account, they're actually looking at the signals together. And
Is that what we mean by intent marketing then? The data analysis of being able to understand exactly where somebody is in the customer journey.
Right. So that's right. And again, if you think back to the latest version of the demand waterfall that the folks at Sirius build, is that okay, I've got it at the top, I've got my target. So it's either my total addressable market or serviceable market, but I've identified X number of accounts, and now I'm going to use various tools that says there's somebody from that account that's in market, researching, what we sell. Yeah. And they could do it through a third party site like a G2 Crowd or a Tech Target, or, something where it's like people are looking for stuff, doing research. They could do it through, other, certainly a lot of the predictive analytics vendors, et cetera, have got these tools of like, we're just pulling stuff in from the web. Yeah. And we're saying, oh my gosh, these people they're out shopping. Yeah. And now with the kind of the sales AI tools is now sales has got tools that are focused on them, that are saying, there are people who are in your CRM system who we see as being active. So there's all these ways of getting that intent. And then certainly once you've engaged them, then you take them down to the next level of the funnel and say, okay, now we've got it, and now we can work it through to qualified. But you're getting a hint ahead of time of what accounts or individuals.
So from if we look at the role of sales and marketing in intent sales and marketing, is it specific enough that it can say, okay, right, as we're looking at in the intent data of this particular account, and we're again talking very B2B here again, aren't we, Jeff? Yes. Do these techniques allow you to say, well, I think this account needs more nurture, so therefore it goes to marketing, or this account needs somebody to go give them a call, and therefore it sits with sales? Is it specific enough that that's how it works?
I think so. That certainly could be one aspect of it, but there's a couple other aspects. One is when you're, since B2B, you've got typically multiple people in a buying situation and or in a buying group, and you may not know who they are. You may not know any of them. It's like, so ABC company, they're on my target account list. I don't have anybody in my database, and the old days of going out and buying a list to say, give me all the IT people or all the operations people at ABC company that just doesn't work anymore, because those lists are just trash these days. And of course, all the data vendors that sponsor this podcast are not.
No, I haven't got any sponsorship yet.
But anyway, it's like that doesn't work anymore. So it's like what you have to be doing is using these intent tools to start to say, okay, here's a couple individuals that are that we know are shopping for our types of solutions, and if I can have enough information around that individual, I can actually say they're in a buying group that I want to get to know. And as I build out more people in the buying group, I mean, with intent tools, it's like now I can see them before we've actually engaged them.
Right.
And so if there are people that I understand are in the buying group that I've mapped out, that I'm getting the signals from any of my intent marketing tools, and then somebody actually went to a webcast, they actually did engage in any marketing activity that we did. Okay, now I've got a better picture of who's in the buying group, and now I can make the decision of, okay, are we ripe for a follow-up call? Are we just going to put them into what we classify as a nurture program and try to send up follow-up materials? But I got more information than I used to, as opposed to just, I'm going to set up my multi-stage, nurture campaign and hope something pops out the other end. It's more intelligent than that.
So this is an extension of the account-based marketing that we were talking about a few weeks ago, right? So what you have to do in a B2B scenario anyway, is the suggestion here that you need to identify those accounts that you want to go after, and those sectors that you want to go after, and then find the data that indicates which of those accounts are actually in the buying mood, that are then engaging with you, and then understanding through what they consume and the activity that they're doing, whereabouts they sit in the buying journey. So there's a sort of there's an understanding of the content and messaging that we're doing aspects of this, isn't there? In that you need to know a little bit about what it is they're consuming to indicate where they are in the intent, what they intend to do.
Well, yes, because you're trying to match your internal selling journey or the funnel, because any demand waterfall funnel is an internal view. You're trying to match that with the external buying journey, right? So if people are out, on any number of these sites and they're doing research, as you can reasonably bet they're early in their buying process. They're not late in their buying process, because late in their buying process, they're knocking on doors and walking in the shop and asking questions. And one of the companies that has done a really good job with this, and this is a case study going back several years, and they presented at a number of the Serious Decisions events, was a company called Kronos. They're global, but they're primarily US based, and and in the UK. And they had, at kind of the top of the funnel was like 4,000 accounts, and they used tools like True Influence and G2 Crowd to get those early intent signals, and they also used like a demand based for somebody came to the website and was searching on particular solution pages. Then all of a sudden everything starts rolling into their marketing automation and their their CRM system, because now it's like I'm capturing things that I can actually attach to contacts, to opportunities, and I can. They didn't, at least at that point, they didn't get into the process of scoring an opportunity, but that's one of the other things a lot of other companies have done, is you either, actually I think Salesforce built an object that would let you score an opportunity based on I've identified so many people in the buying group. I've got so many signals of who's out there connected with us or is out there on third-party sites. Yeah. And now I can say, here's one that we should be paying more attention to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's sort of something we've been doing, I guess, as marketers, as B2B marketers for a while, right? You always know that when somebody fills in a book a demo form, you kind of know their intent then, right?
Yeah, right.
So, and that sort of lead scoring, that's, if somebody comes on your website 5 times, it counts as something, and therefore there's a level of intent inferred from that, isn't there? So,
but the thing is, it's like what as we've discussed before, it's like so many people are doing their research before they ever reveal themselves. Yep. It's like before they get to booking the demo, it's like, I know if I book the demo, I'll be hounded for months.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we think? I mean, I know that I think we're on fairly safe ground with this one. So what's your view? Is this going to be a one to watch, which I think is a bit mature for that? Is it a one-hit wonder? It seems
it's a little bit late
for a while.
Late for that. And is it a Wonderwall?
Or is it a Wonderwall?
I would say it's a Wonderwall. And, one is because the technology keeps evolving to enable, using AI tools to be able to do this better and better and better. So that's secondly, there are technology providers in this space that many of them started 15 years ago with, in the predictive analytics areas or an ABM marketing tool, blah, blah, blah. And they just continued, the ones that survive have continued to evolve. And they're vested in making this work. And I, just heard so many success stories of people who were doing this right. And again, I think that the tools are there to help, because it go back to one of the challenges is in a fairly large organization with multiple products, marketing people spread across regions and, maybe different business units or whatever, it becomes complicated, and the tools are making it easier to support that kind of distributed, complicated organization.
Right. Perfect. So we'll be playing out with Oasis and Wonderwall, so I don't need to think of a new song. It's handy.
Well, we can't do any more one-hit wonders because we're running out of tunes to refer to.
One of the things, what I'm curious about with some of this stuff is about whether all the changes with cookies and privacy and stuff will affect these, because a lot of these tools, aren't they? They're picking up their data, so that it sort of goes back to some of the other conversations we've had about data and earning trust. So yes, we're on a bit of a theme. So will you join me again to discuss another hit or miss next week?
Sure.
That's splendid. I should have asked you that before we started recording, but I'm glad you said sure. So I'll see you again next week. Thank you very much, mate. I'll include the links to, if we can track down those case studies you mentioned, I'll include the links to that in the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your heart is out. I'm sure you've heard it all before, but you never really had a doubt. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now.
Thank you, Jeff. There we have it. Intent marketing, a Wonderwall. And of course, that was Oasis. Do you agree with us? Let us know what you think. I'll share some of the research that Jeff referred to and include it in the show notes. You can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.fm. Right, on to this week's guest. Darren Guarnaccia is the SVP of Product at Hootsuite, the global leader in social media management, where he leads the company's product management, product strategy, and product marketing functions. Darren has over 20 years of experience in marketing technology leadership roles, having previously been at CrownPeak, where he held the position of Chief Product and Strategy Officer. There, he built out the product marketing function, unifying product management and product strategy. Previously, he was the CMO at Lytics, a leading independent CDP vendor, and before Lytics, he was the Executive Vice President in several roles over a 10-year career at Sitecore, including Chief Strategy Officer, playing an instrumental role in establishing the company's market-leading product strategy, go-to-market motions, and partner ecosystem. Throughout his career, Darren has held roles at the intersection of product strategy and go-to-market and brings his customer outcomes focus to everything he does, including to us at Rockstar CMO FM. It was fabulous to catch up with Darren. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Darren, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're delighted. I mean, we've known each other for how many years? Since that time at Gilbane that I won't talk too much about. But when we were competing vendors on the same stage, was that
at least 2 decades? At least 2 decades.
It was not 2 decades, but it was a long time ago. As I sort of read out in your bio, you're now at Hootsuite, social media platform, which I'm pretty sure our audience will know or maybe even use. But I better, for those that haven't, quickly describe what Hootsuite does for me, please.
Hootsuite provides a platform for you to publish across lots of different social media types, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram. And it supports from the mom and pop operations like literally my own mother, who knows who Hootsuite is, all the way up to companies like McDonald's, big global brands. And so really helps people be able to publish at scale, but also, stay in touch and have conversations with their customers across all the different networks and platforms.
Right. So we've got the Hootsuite bit out of the way. So what is it that you do at Hootsuite then, Darren?
So my title is head of product. What I actually do is sort of live at the crossroads between kind of what we make and how we bring it to market, and the strategy mixed into that. So that's product marketing, product management, strategy, our ecosystem, all of the things that help us figure out what problem should we be solving for our customers, and how do we talk to them about it, and really bringing it's the in. I call it the in and the out. Like, how do you bring the knowledge from the market into the org? How do you figure out the problems you're going to solve for your customers, and then how do you bring it back to the market? Yeah,
that's super interesting. And like I was saying, we've known each other quite a while. You've had an interesting career path. You're a techie, former techie, a bit like myself. You've been a CTO, a CMO, but the common thread has always been product leadership, right? With you, product management, product marketing. It sounds like that's where you're on the crossroads of right now. As a former CMO yourself, what do you think is the relationship between marketing and you product guys?
I think the best relationships, honestly, I mean, there's wild debates about where does product marketing live? Does it live in marketing? Does it live in product? I don't think that's really the right question. The question is, how do you make the org work in a way that just is customer-centric, outcome-centric? I used to say for years that customers don't buy products, they want to solve outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's still true. Yeah. And so one of my missions when I joined Hootsuite was, how do I bring an outcome-centric mentality to the product and also marketing? Because the outcomes you're trying to drive in product are the same outcomes you should be talking about in marketing. Yeah. And I feel that that's the intersection that needs to happen, is bringing that team together to say, here are the outcomes we're trying to drive. Here's how to talk about it. Here's how the product should work to solve those outcomes and get customers to the best benefit they can get from the product.
That's and that sounds perfect, because you talk on LinkedIn about transforming your team from feature function to customer-driven mindset, which I think to anybody who's sat in that sort of cusp between products and the market will probably appeal to them. So what do you mean by customer-driven mindset? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, customer-driven mindset is like, what's the job to be done? Clayton Christensen talked about this for years. That famous milkshake analogy, that they realized that people were actually buying milkshakes to entertain themselves on their way to work. And when you understand what the outcome is that someone wants from your product, you can dial it in. You can really solve their problems in a way when you really understand the outcome they're seeking. We realized at Hootsuite, I'll give you an example, that part of the thing we needed to solve for was not just publishing on social media. Yeah. It was, the outcome was give me confidence that I'm doing the right thing. Help me know what to do, when to do, how to do. And so that with understanding of the outcome, it all of a sudden changed how we were building product. It changed how we talked about the product, because now it's about how do I level you up? How do I help you be more confident? How do I help you achieve greater results?
Oh, that's really interesting, because also, I mean, that's talking about the emotion of the user and the emotion of the buyer at the same time, right? Which is something we talk about a lot in marketing, in being useful and in solving problems. So you've brought that into the product as well.
Absolutely. It has to. It has to live there.
Yeah. And how do you bring that together? Do you all get together like from a marketing and a product perspective and then agree what those top outcomes are?
Yeah, informed by user research. So part of our product team and our product marketing team has a user research function and a market research function. Yeah. And so bringing a lot of that knowledge in, and then we get together and we work through things like the business value canvas and other kinds of tools that really help you get to sort of there's a couple kinds of jobs people have, right? There's a functional job, which is what most companies and product people think about, but there's the emotional job.
Yeah.
There's also the career job, right? I want to get ahead in the world and I want to be successful, right? There's different kinds of jobs. And so getting in around a virtual table, because in pandemic land, we did everything through Miro, but getting around the table to say, let's talk about this user. Let's talk about the pains and the gains they've got. Let's think about what they're trying to achieve. And if this all went beautifully, what would get better for them?
Mm-hmm. And Miro, I mentioned Miro. We were on Miro earlier on with my team. It's quite fun. But anyway, that's a distraction. So you've got product and marketing now sitting together and talking about those outcomes. Now, do you have a classic sales team, and do you work through them as well? And are they part of that group?
We do. Yeah, so we have a three parts of our business, right? Mm-hmm. We have a self-service kind of part of our business, which people can transact with a credit card. You can buy an account, and you can be using Hootsuite. That's what my mom uses. Then you have like our kind of mid-market solution that's sold through a sales team, and then we have our large enterprise solution, which is the likes of Adobe and McDonald's and State Farm and all these other large mega companies. Those are your classic sales-driven motions.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're all working off these same outcomes. And I thought it was interesting because when I was thinking about the audience from Hootsuite and thinking about what it might be like to be a marketer there, I know you run products, but that you kind of sell direct, like you said, to one person and all the way up to these enterprises. You're kind of B2C and B2B. So quite a lot of time on this show, we talk about the difference between B2B and B2C and what people can learn from B2B out of B2C. What sort of drive, what do you see in that? How do you kind of cross that? How do you talk to your mum and talk to McDonald's at the same time?
Yeah, personas. I think we use personas and empathy maps to really understand like what the jobs to be done for all those different kinds of people. Because a practitioner in a large org isn't that different than a small mom and pop. It's just a matter of time, how much time they have, but they all have the same problems, right? They're all time poor. I don't think any marketer ever had too much time on their hands and too much budget. Like that doesn't happen. So, the question is this side of desk work or is this your main time, full-time job? And some of the use cases change a little bit, but it's really just understanding the different use cases and personas. And we have slightly different personas for those. And then in a larger org, you're going to have, director, VP level type folks. You're going to have CMO type folks. So you have different kind of personas for the larger orgs, and they may have more sophisticated needs. But really understanding the different stages, that's how we design for those. But there's a lot of commonality and a lot of overlap, which is how we're able to do it all.
Right. And so, but the interesting thing is if I view that from a marketing perspective, then I'm creating different messaging and different content for those different audiences. And I'm probably emphasizing certain features for some and certain features for others. But for you, from a product perspective, it's the same product, right? So how do you balance out, well, I've got an incredibly experienced social media expert looking for these advanced features over here. And I keep bringing up your mum, and that's probably rude. And you've got your mum. Well, we could use me, actually, because I'm also a customer. And you've got a fairly time-poor, simple, looking to do the simple things kind of customer. How do you, from a product perspective, synthesize all of that?
Use cases really help us figure that out. Like what is your use case in your time poor world where you're going to do this 15% of your time, and what do you need, right? So we understand those use cases really well, and the workflows, and a lot of what we do, and we call it the aha moment, right? There's an aha moment that happens inside of our product where someone realizes, oh wow, this scheduling feature is super handy and gives me a ton of savings in time. So that's your sort of primary light bulb moment where you realize, all right, this thing's got some utility value for me. Now, as you mature, then we start thinking about, and we use the Reforge framework internally to think about this. Then we start to think about, how do we scale you into a habit moment? How do we scale you then into further use cases and deepen your use of the product? Not everybody wants that. So there are certain customers who are going to be super happy because you only have 20% of your time to just use the product in a lightweight way. And that's fine. Yeah. But then we also think about, how do we scale to larger orgs? And that's where the differences between, say, the mid-market solution and the enterprise solution, they have lots of additional capabilities and more sophisticated use cases. And so we then build and extend for those. But while the core product is similar, there's a ton of extension points that really solve the bigger, more complicated use cases.
Right. So you hook people in with the simple stuff, and then it just gets deeper, and you get sucked into all this great additional functionality.
Right. Well, the value. Right? It's all about value. How do you drive more value, deeper value? And as people are getting more success with the product, then they use more.
Yeah. So from your perspective, then, a customer journey isn't like from us, from a marketing perspective about how somebody buys the product. For you, the customer journey is how they then engage, adopt, and then start adopting these advanced features, and how you can tease them along that journey.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
100%. And that's the beauty of SaaS. It's the curse and the beauty of SaaS. You're never done. You have got to constantly be, helping customers achieve more value and grow. In the old software world, where we came from, you could sell the software and run away. You can't do that. You're on the hook for making them
and sometimes as fast as you can.
Sometimes as fast as you can. That's not possible in SaaS, right? They are always 1 month or 1 year renewal away. So if you're driving value and success with them, they're going to leave.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I can't, and I'd love to talk to you about products and marketing some more, but I need to sort of, as I've got an insider from Hootsuite, I should ask a question about social media. So, I mean, I would imagine that most of our listeners have some social media in their marketing mix. And talking to an insider, what's the most popular, an insider from one of the most popular social media platforms? What's your number one tip at the moment for what that you would give to an enterprise marketer right now about engaging with social media?
Stop spraying content. Start creating conversations. It's not new, but I think sometimes in our rush to drive more content, more stuff, we just put out a lot of content. And we don't really think about how we're creating conversations. If you think about what makes you memorable, it's not that you're spamming somebody with 20 pounds of content. It's that you're memorable. Yeah. How are you memorable? By invoking conversation and emotion. That's ultimately what drives memory. Right. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is start thinking about how your content creates conversation, and then how are you engaging in your community?
Right. So sort of ask more questions and then be responsive on that, not just broadcast all the time about yourself.
Right. Or add value. Like bring up a really interesting piece of content or fact or observation, and then generate a discussion around it and be useful and add value. But versus just kind of wading into a place you don't belong.
Right. And because people just ignore you if you just shout at them all the time. That's perfect. Now I'm gonna come to our final question. It's a question I asked you before. So back in 2018, when you were actually a CMO back then, I interviewed you for our web publication, and you threw. I have to introduce this into our Rockstar CMO swimming pool, our portal to hell for all the snake-oil BS and overhyped trends of our wonderful industry. 3 years ago, you threw single vendor marketing suites into that pool. Now, what would you chuck in today, 3 years later?
This is going to sound funny coming from a guy that spent most of my career in the web content management world. I actually throw websites into the pit.
Websites,
and I'll tell you why. When this pandemic hit, I didn't go to anybody's website. My favorite watering hole, my favorite restaurant, I didn't go to anybody's websites. I went to their social sites. I went to Facebook pages. I wanted to see how my restaurants were faring. They actually responded to me. We had conversations there. And I almost just wonder, is it time for websites to die? Because they're one way. They're not, there's a conversation there. Maybe you have a chat bot, but really, honestly, who's doing chat bots other than to pester you? And I ignore them anyway. I ignore all the chat bots. And so I would say, like, is it time to throw the website and all of these sort of one-way sort of broadcast channels into the pit? Is it not time to actually be human again and have two-way conversations and actually, go to a place where you can do those things? So I think that's my new chuck in the pit thing, is like these, websites particularly, which is funny.
That's a bold move, but I mean, do you not see the role of the website as your sort of anchor property that you're where? I mean, I see the role. I agree with you about the role of social as being where you might communicate, but isn't your website like your headquarters, but your social and all that kind of stuff, for your telephones and your emails and stuff like that, so you can engage? I mean, you're gonna have to gently talk me into this. All right, so it's websites going the Rockstar CMO pool. As I spend most of my career it's a provocative statement. Management.
But think about it this way. First of all, what's the belief in marketing content nowadays? And that is that sort of highly polished, which is your website, right? Yes. It's also, it's 20, 30 years on. Like the first time I ran into my first WCM product was literally in 1995, right? I bought Broadvision, and it was hard to implement that back then. It's not really gotten any easier. And now you have all these web vendors talking about composable DXP. That just makes my teeth ache, and just the complexity and the pain. About where we struggle as a business to update content. It's too hard. It takes too long. Versus people can jump onto their social media page and like knock out some content. The complexity is too high.
Yeah. But isn't that more of an indictment of the platforms more than the form? Do you know what I mean? Like it's actually the fact that our websites are these static monoliths governed by these content management systems that really haven't responded to our needs.
But it's 25 years on, and we haven't figured it out. And we can pick on WordPress, right? So something super turnkey out of the box. But people still don't do that. My restaurant down the road that uses WordPress still didn't put their stuff up on their website. True. So why is that? Like, I think that there's something about that. And I wonder if maybe that's the problem, that customers are just not coming to websites as much anymore. And I say that, I think Hootsuite has some of the biggest traffic around all the content we create, and our blog is great. Mm-hmm. I think blogs and content that is sort of living and constantly updated and a bit more authentic. And maybe it's the authenticity that I'm really after here. Yeah. But even in blogs, you can have a conversation. We can discuss, do you agree or disagree? Yeah. It's really the sort of the one-sided nature of a conversation that I'm objecting to with websites.
It's the brochureware website that's monolithic, that's hard to change, that's governed by some massive CMS, which is basically the thing we're throwing in, right? Something a bit more agile and edgy, a blog, for example, or something like that, or somebody who's actually using WordPress properly is fine. But
as long as it's constantly being updated, it reflects what's going on. It's not just a glossy piece, or it's functional, right? I think, there are websites out there that are incredibly functional. If you could argue that Hootsuite itself is a website, right? It's an application, but it's a website.
Yes.
Things like that are different. But these static sort of, things that don't ever change, I think that's the stuff I huck into the pit.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I'm sold. Well, pretty much. Well, almost. Yeah. Okay. until somebody asks me to build one. No. Yes, I think you're right. So these brochureware monolithic websites that never get changed into the swimming pool. That was my final question, Darren. I'm just looking at time. I know that you're a busy chap. If people are looking to find you and spin the dial on the interwebs, where might they find you?
Well, you can certainly find me on Twitter and LinkedIn /DGuarnaccia and @DGuarnaccia on both of those places. Yeah. And of course, we're constantly writing, putting up great thought leadership stuff on our blog at Hootsuite.com. I think we get like 8 million viewers a year or a month. So it's a lot of content. We put a ton of thought leadership up there. So that's a bit of my writing as well.
Well, splendid. Well, I'll include all the links that you just shared in the show notes. Thank you very much for your time, Darren. I look forward to speaking to you again, mate. Maybe not 3 years next time, maybe a bit soon. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Darren. So we're chucking brochware websites into the Rockstar CMO swimming pool. I definitely didn't see that one coming. Delighted to get Darren's insight from within a company that's touched most of us marketers. I will, of course, include links to him and Hootsuite in the show notes. Right, it's that time of the week. It's Friday evening and time to find out where my friend and content marketing guru Robert Rose would like to transport us to for a marketing thought and a cocktail in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. Good to see you in the bar. Tonight, we have it's been a while since we've done something a little more fancy. And I don't have any name for this other than I just call it how do you have a fancy whiskey? So I'm calling it the fancy whiskey.
Nice.
And so you take your favorite blended whiskey. I have several, but I'll let you choose whatever blended whiskey you like. Then you add basically, one, or call it 1 part, right? One part blended whiskey. And I'll let you also define a part, because a part for me is really quite big, but it may be smaller for others. So 1 part blended whiskey. Then you add a little bit, a quarter part, let's call it, of triple sec. And I know that sounds a little weird, but keep me with this, a triple sec. And then a half, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of orange, like a squeeze from an orange or a squeeze from something sweet. Like if you really sweet grapefruit or a really sweet orange or a tangerine or something, that would be good just to give it a sweetness. And then a dash of bitters. And then, of course, whatever you like for your garnish, whether you like a lemon or an orange twist or something like that. So it's no ice in this. You just shake that up into a very cold glass and drink it like a martini. And that's your fancy whiskey.
That sounds very fancy. Now then, I have this envision the way you come up with these cocktails, which is, like it's almost like a lab going on there. But you didn't put ice in that, and I just put ice in mine. And the reason why I put ice in mine is because when I survey my desktop bar, I find that I have gin. And my gin this week is Bombay Sapphire, and I will have a little drop of Bombay Sapphire, which is a bit like whiskey in that it is an alcoholic drink. And I do enjoy a large part myself too, my friend. And then those lovely things that you put in it, you know what it conjured up to me? It conjured up cucumber tonic water.
There we go.
Which I shall liberally pour into here. No shaking, otherwise that would make it a bit all fizzy. Let me taste this. That's very fancy, Robert. I do like that. Could drink one of these every week. And what did you call it?
I just call it a fancy whiskey.
That's very nice. I'm not getting the whiskey in mine, but there's probably a reason for that. Jolly nice. And if we're going to be drinking these fancy drinks, where are you taking us this week, sir?
I think with a fancy whiskey, there are a number of places we should go, but it feels like this kind of whiskey, we should be going someplace really sophisticated. And so one of the most sophisticated places I know is in your hometown there. And I will be honest with you, I'm forgetting the name of the place. It's a hotel just on the outskirts of Old London. And I know that doesn't help at all. Trust me,
because London is quite old.
Yes, well, I mean the proper city center, the proper proper London city center.
The city of London,
London.
Yeah.
And and there's an old hotel there that is really a fancy, sophisticated, white glove, service kind of place. And I've been there I've never stayed there, but I have been there for dinner and for lunch a couple of times. And it's just absolutely fabulous. And I was trying to look it up prior to our get together and I couldn't find it, but it's that hotel right outside. And if I find it while we're talking, I'll mention it. But
I think
otherwise, I think
it's just painted. I think you've painted a lovely picture, and there are a number of different establishments that I can think of that are hotels across London with a similar sort of style and
not one of those, and it's one of those classic English hotels, right? Not one where you walk in and where there's mod, furniture and balls of light sitting in the middle of the lobby and, IKEA furniture in your room. Not that, right?
No,
it's the classic old English hotel with, where everybody speaks with a posh accent and, that whole thing. It's that.
And people are taking tea. Afternoon.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right. In the afternoon, and they're usually like little old ladies in there, and they're wearing their white gloves and the whole thing.
Exactly, and it's just our kind of place. We'd fit right in there, I think.
Yes, sure. But it has that ambiance, right? It has that sophistication ambiance where you feel like you're going to talk about, the sophistication of politics or writing or or economics or something, right? That's
So we're in our hushed voices because and by the way, the virtual Rockstar CMO bar is sophisticated. I mean, we do have a pianist, so therefore we are quite sophisticated.
Oh, that is true.
What if we're going to lower the tone with our talk of marketing, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, we'll talk about something that is not talked about in hushed tones, and that is brand. This is something that's been on my mind lately because I've just been noticing so much of it, which is as we come into this new normal, the next normal, whatever you want to call it, how much we're seeing brand become an important part of content strategy. And, and just to put numbers to it, and these are anecdotal numbers, obviously, but, the numbers that would say, okay, if in 2019 I did 20 consulting projects and 3 of them were driven by the CMO and the brand organization. Yeah. And in 2021, we've to date done probably 8 or 9 projects thus far. And all but one of them have been driven out of the brand organization and have ties to the CMO. Right. And there was even an article that was produced just a week or two ago at Digiday that talked about this idea of the CMO and the pressure of brand.
I saw that. I saw that. And I thought of you, actually. And I thought of you and Joe's podcast, which I'm not going to promote anymore. But I thought it was, and you discussed it on your podcast last week. And I think, and I saw that article and I thought of you immediately. So carry on. Sorry.
No worries. But what it made me think of was sort of the opposite, right? Which is when we see brands, and it happens more and more these days, where they make a mistake, right?
Yeah. And
they falter in some way and it goes viral on social. You get some really, unintended either error or quite frankly, just dumb mistake that a brand makes. And it's not the brand making the mistake. Let's be clear. It's a person in the brand that's making a mistake here, either in a bad way or in a silly way. And the reaction that produces. And I'm reminded, of a lesson that we can learn here is when we start thinking of ourselves as brand storytellers. There was this, so Stephen Covey, the guy who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he said, I think it's really an interesting quote. He said, we tend to judge ourselves by our motives and others by their behavior. So in other words, if we make a mistake, it's like, I didn't mean to do that, right? But by others, it's by, we go, oh, they've screwed up. They're mean, they're racist, they're sexist, they meant to do that. Yeah. And it's an attribution error, of course, to be able to do that. So it basically leads us to sort of say, let's understand that our brand has flaws in its character. Like, we need to recognize that our brand, when we tell our brand story, we can start to recognize that we all have flaws in our character, and we can use those. I mean, look, Luke Skywalker's got a dark side. If you look at Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs, she's got shame about her childhood. Even George, like It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, right? He's the perfect father, the brother, and the friend, but he's got self-worth issues. Indiana Jones, he's got so much hubris about what he does that he's got kind of a blindness about the fact that, people around him get hurt. And that flaw in our brand hero, that can help us create conflict and tension in our stories that help our brand be even stronger. Yeah. In other words, if we can start telling some of the darker side, the flawed side of our brand, we can use some of that to even build a stronger brand and avoid some of those mistakes and earn our right to actually make a mistake or two when we're out there. I'll finish with this because it's so top of mind. Just recently, you heard about all of the things that are going on with this, with Basecamp, right? I don't know if you followed this story, but basically, quickly.
I've interviewed the former VP of Marketing, Andy Diderozzi, for Rockstar CMO. Really nice guy.
Yeah. They had a bad week a few weeks ago. And the bad week was, and we won't go into any detail here, you can look it up online, but basically they had this thing where their employees, and they lost 30% of their employees in 1 week due to an internal work issue and conflict in the workplace and some of the decreed changes that the management wanted to make. Yeah. In any normal situation, that goes unnoticed, right? But in a situation where the brand has purported itself to be perfect in the way that it goes about its life and showing it, that we are the perfect example of what work culture should be and we know better and all that, it shows up as being truly ironic and thus hurts them more than if they had sort of worked on showing some of the flawed parts of their character as well.
Oh, indeed, and it's that delivery on the promise, isn't it, of your brand? That's right. That aspect of that we've talked about before, and I had Margot Bloomstein on last week, and she was talking about trust, and she was talking about that you can build trust through being vulnerable. Right. So sort of what you're saying, I think having some of those rough edges and acknowledging them actually builds trust in your audience because, they can see that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a tool, right? And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we need to write blog posts about how horrible we are, right? That's not the point. And it's also not the point to say that we need to always point out our flaws when we point out our strengths as well. It's to acknowledge it, right? It is to acknowledge the flaws in our brand and not get so wrapped up in our perfection that we don't acknowledge those things and learn from them and address them in a way that helps the audience have interest and trust in what we do. It's the facing our dark side. It's the facing our shame about our childhood. It's facing the fact that we've got self-worth issues, and it's facing the fact that we have hubris and a blind drive, all of those things that those heroes makes those heroes so interesting, right? If Luke Skywalker were perfect, we wouldn't care about him.
No, exactly.
It's the fact that there's a dark side that he's avoiding and that he acknowledges that makes him so interesting. And so we can acknowledge those things and say, at its most tactical level, this is what we're trying to avoid becoming. That makes us more interesting and more trustworthy, quite frankly, to those who trust in us.
Yeah, and some of those rough edges, it's funny, are actually what attracts your tribe, aren't they? They acknowledge that you're a bit different through. That's right. Through those things. I mean, somebody's chatting to me about this very podcast, and he was like, "You've got this, and you've got this Rockstar CMO brand, but you're not really a rock star. You don't have that rock star attitude." And it's being human about the whole affair that I think is I don't know where I was going with that, but
but you're interviewing those who are. That's
exactly
the point.
So that's where I'm going. Exactly. Thank you for that. I'm absolutely interviewing people who are, and you included. So back to the thing. So we need to admit our.
I'm just the bartender, man. I'm just all I am is the bartender.
Well, one of these weeks I'll let you play on the piano.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. Very nice thought, Robert. And I need to find that DigiDay article, include that in the show notes.
Yeah, do that, because it's a great article of what's going on right now.
Yeah. And where can people find thoughts?
Our little hovel on the web is contentadvisory.net, where we talk about these things and many others. Yeah, that's the best place.
And when the listener spins a dial on the interwebs, where they find you?
Well, there is our own podcast that we talk to, and that's called This Old Marketing, which you can find on your favorite podcatcher, wherever you podcasts. How many podcasts can you catch if you catch a podcast, I guess? And then, of course, on social media, Robert_Rose on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well.
Splendid. I've never got onto that calling those things podcatchers, but I guess I should. If the cool kids are calling them podcatchers, I keep saying.
Apparently, and the word is not subscribe anymore. It's follow, because you don't actually. The word is actually, I guess, follow the podcast instead of subscribe, because what you're actually doing with all of those podcatchers is following them, not necessarily subscribing to them. So I've been told otherwise.
Oh, well, there you see. That's why I don't have people catching my pod in their podcatcher and following. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Robert. And will I see you in the bar next week?
You will indeed.
I look forward to it, my friend. See you then. Thank you, Robert. We seem to talk a lot about brand and trust on this podcast. Wonderful perspective there. Would love to know what you guys think. So that's a wrap on episode 62 of the Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast. Thanks again to Jeff, Darren and Robert. I really appreciate their time. So please check out the show notes, click their links, follow them, take a look at their work. You can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. Does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Let me know what you think. Please leave a rating, review and subscribe, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff is back. I'm hoping to chat about measuring content marketing with Misha Tramp, VP Strategy and Insights at Metier. And again, I'll join Robert Rose in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and I hope you'll again join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.